What is up, guys? My name is Lex. Welcome back to the vlog. Today we're playing at Resorts World 2-5 and 5-10, and right when we got here we got sat down into the 2-5 game, and I didn't have enough time to get my camera set up, so I have a hand for you guys. I have pocket aces in middle position. There's an early position raise to $20. I 3-bet to 60 and he makes a call. Heads up to the flop of Queen, Jack, 10, Rainbow. When he checks to me, I put out a bet of $40 and he check calls. Turn card is an 8, bringing in a flush draw. He checks to me again. I ramp up the betting now. I make it $210. He hems and haws back and forth, and makes the call. The river card is the deuce of diamonds, pretty big brick. When he checks to me again here, I decide to make a nitty check back just because he can have some two pairs like Queen, Jack, Queen 10, Jack 10 that doesn't want to raise because Ace King is a nuts and it's a 3-bet pot. So I decide to check back here with my pocket aces on this board, and they are good. I have another hand for you guys. I finally make it over to my 5-10 table, buy in for $3,000. My very first hand, look down at pocket queens under the gun, make it 30. The button, who is a younger Asian male, don't have any background on him. He makes it $100 with $1,000 in a stack. Folds back to me, and I think this is a mix between a 4-bet and a call. And given the fact that I didn't have any reads on him and it's my first hand of the table, I decided to make the call. Flop is 7, 3, deuce, 2 hearts. I check. He bets 60 and I call. Turn card is the ace of hearts. Pretty terrible card. I check and he checks back. River is the ace of spades. Now the board is 7, 3, deuce, 2 hearts, ace of hearts, ace of spades. I decide to check, letting him potentially value own himself with some weaker pairs or potentially bluff with his missed draws, king high or queen high hands. I check it over to him, looking to check call basically any bet. However, he bets basically 2x pot. He makes a $450 bet here on the river. And my mantra so far on this trip, I've been here for 10 days, is to fold one pair hands on the river, 2 big aggression bets. These nitty regs just don't have it in them to put in some big, massive bluffs here. I think for a while, and I mean, most likely this is a call. This is like a GTO call all day long. I don't have the Queen of Hearts, which is not the best card. If I had the Queen of Hearts, it'd be an easier call. But I just don't think this guy is turning a king high hand or like pocket nines into a bluff. So I think for a while and decide to fold, and we will never know. All right, we finally have our camera set up this time. We have Jack 10 offsuit in the big blind. The same player from last hand makes it 30. I make the call. Jack 10, 7, 2 diamonds on the flop. I check and he checks back. The turn card is the deuce of hearts. Now I'm going to lead out. I lead out for $60, and my opponent thinks for a little bit of time and makes the call. The river card is an interesting one. It's an offsuit queen, so it does bring in ace king and king 9 for a straight, and I contemplate going back and forth whether I should bet or check on this card, and I think this is a very aggressive opponent. I think a check is better. I can let him bluff with worse hands like a 7, maybe pocket 8s or pocket 9s, or a total airball bluff. He has the range advantage. He's the only one who can have ace king in this hand. Given the fact that I didn't 3-bet pre-flop, he can assume that I don't have ace king, and he's the only one who can have the nuts. So I check it over to him, looking to check call basically any bet. This is the same player from last hand who put in the $450 bet. This time he decides to bet $490. Man, what is with this guy? He is a wild man. And given the fact that he just did this a hand ago and I didn't see his hand, I don't think I can fold 2 pair here. I think he could be turning some hands into a bluff. Maybe if he has a king blocker, maybe he's turning some pairs into a bluff. So I get a count. It's $490. I make the call. He shows queen 10 for a higher 2 pair. I show my 2 pair and they are no good. So not running the best starting off this session. Obviously, it's not really good paying off a huge river bet with 2 pair, but my hand was very strong. It was under-repped, and sometimes you're just going to lose in poker, and you're just going to have to suck it up and move on to the next hand. Just a couple hands later, we look down on the button at pocket 9s. There's a raise to 30. I make the call. Heads up to king, deuce, 9, 2 diamonds, flopping a set here. My opponent checks. I put out a bet of $40. He contemplates his options, goes back and forth, and decides to fold. So no action there with our set. Tonight at Resorts World, there is 3 5-10 tables. We get moved over to the main game. We look down under the gun at pocket kings. We raise it up to $30. It folds all the way back around to the small blind, who looks like a tighter pro. He ends up making the call. The board is queen 8, 9 rainbow. My opponent checks to me, and on this very connected board, I decide to check back. The turn card is an 8 of hearts, bringing in a flush draw. He checks again, and now I'm going to start betting. I want to make it look like I'm turning my hand into a bluff, but I really do have value. I bet big. I make it $100. My opponent doesn't think for too long and makes the call. The dealer collects our bets, going to the river, which is the Jack of Spades. Not the best card. Brings a one-liner to a straight. Any 10 will beat us now. My opponent decides to do something I was not expecting. He leads out here. He makes it $70. This feels like a blocker bet all day long. Doesn't feel like a bluff at all. I'm pretty sure he has a straight, maybe some full houses. We lose to 8-9, pocket 9s, pocket 8s, pocket jacks, any 10, and I contemplate whether I should fold or possibly turn my hand into a bluff. The reason I would turn my hand into a bluff is to try to get him off at 10. I have 2 kings in my hand, so I block king 10 for the nut straight. I also have a range advantage. I can have pocket queens and pocket jacks, and my opponent just called preflop, so we can assume he doesn't have pocket jacks or pocket queens. So I think about raising up to $500 here, but my experience with live players, they don't like folding straights. So I think for a little bit of time and decide to let this one go. We switch tables one more time. There's a raise to 30. I look down at ace king offsuit next to act. I 3-bet up to $120, folds back around to my opponent, and he makes a call. King, jack, 8 skittles. We flop top pair, top kicker. My opponent checks. I'm definitely going to be c-betting on this board. I make it $150. My opponent matches my bet. He puts in $150 to make the call. The fourth card here is the Queen of Hearts, which is actually a very bad card. We're now losing to Queen Jack, King Queen, 9-10, Ace 10 for a straight. We're also losing to Pocket Queen, so when my opponent checks to me, I decide to pot control on this turn card and check back. If we were behind on the turn, we got there on the river, it's a 10. We end up making the nut straight with our ace. I expect my opponent to lead out here sometimes with maybe a hand like Ace Jack or Ace Queen, but he ends up checking, so I'm definitely going to be betting this river, trying to get value from all 2 pair hands or possibly a 9. I put out a bet of $300. He thinks for a little bit of time, tells me he has 2 pair, and folds. We're getting a little bit of money back from our big loss earlier with Jack 10. However, the next 2 hours we run pretty cold. We play a bunch of hands and we don't win any of them. I'm going to show you guys a 20-second montage of all the hands I played. After 2 hours of folding and missing boards, we pick up pocket deuces, make it $30 in the cutoff. The button calls, flop is queen 10 deuce, flopping bottom set. I put out a bet, and before my chips hit the table, my opponent folds his cards. So, yep, that is just the theme of this session, flopping sets and not getting any action. Next hand, the button opens it up to 30. I 3-bet 7-8 of hearts to $150 in the small blind, folds back to him, and he decides to put in a 4-bet. He makes it $370, and in this game, it had been playing pretty passive pre-flop. Not many 3-bets or not many 4-bets, so I put him on a very strong hand. We started the hand out here with about $3,500 in our stacks, so about 350 big blinds effective. Some hands I'll be 3-betting and folding to a 4-bet, but 7-8 suited is not one of them. We are very deep, and I can smash some boards with some 2 pairs, sets, straights, and flushes, so I end up making the call. We're going heads up in a 4-bet pot. Let's crush this board. One time, it comes out ace, deuce, deuce, 2 spades. We completely miss. No fun for us this time. I decide to check it over to my opponent. He puts out a bet, and we fold. Alright, the depressing music is a little overboard. However, this game is not much action. We decide to head to the cage and cash out. However, we are not done for the night. We are going to head over to the Wynn, try to get into a better action game. Alright guys, that is it for our session at Resorts World. Ended up playing around 5.5 hours, lost 15-20. Ran pretty bad the whole time. Honestly, this is probably the first session that I've actually ran pretty slow. I had to fold pocket 10s to a 4-bet, would have flopped a set. Anytime I flopped a set tonight, I got 0 action, so not the best. Ended up losing 1,500. We're gonna head over to the Wynn right now and play for another 3 hours, see how that goes. I'll keep you guys updated if we win any more or lose any more. We get seated into a 2-5 no-limit game, buy-in for $1,500, and we get into one interesting hand over here. There is a raise to $10, which doesn't really seem like a normal raise at 2-5. I 3-bet Queen Jack of Spades to $40, folds all the way back around to the initial raiser, and he ends up making the call. Flop is 3, 4, 7, 2 spades. We flop a flush draw. My opponent checks. I put out a $50 bet, and he makes the call. The 10-minute walk over here was not enough time to cool down. I'm still a little steamed up from my $1,500 loss at Resorts World, so I got to play good poker, try to get my head on straight, but we're going to the turn, which is a good one. It's the deuce of spades, giving us a flush. My opponent checks to me, and I'm going to be ramping up the betting now with my queen high flush. I make it $200. He thinks and thinks and thinks and decides to give his cards back to the dealer, so we end up taking down this pot. All right, you guys can probably see we are no longer at the Wynn. We are at the Bellagio. It is 2 a.m. on a Friday night. Wynn was really slow, so we came here to play late night 510. We lost about $1,500 at Resorts World, and then we won $355 at the Wynn, and now we're gonna play here another 3 hours. Let's see if we can run it up. Let's go. All right, I have a hand for you guys. We are in the sports book at the Bellagio, Andrew Nemi vlog style out here. So we're playing 5-handed at our table. There's a guy that has been opening up a ton of hands. He makes it 30 under the gun. One person calls. I'm on the button with 8-9 offsuit. Decide to get a little frisky. I raise it up to $150. The small blind cold calls $150. Initial raiser folds, and the second caller makes a call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop of ace, 10, 9, all diamonds. So I flop bottom pair here. When it checks to me, I decide to check this one back. Going to the turn, which is the 8 of clubs, now gives us a 2 pair. The small blind checks, and now the initial under the gun plus 2 player who called the raise, then called my 3-bet, leads out pretty small, $150. So with my 2 pair here, I consider raising, but it's a very dynamic board. Queen Jack is a straight. Any flush beats us. Any ace X hand for 2 pair beats us. I have bottom 2 pair here, so I decide to just make the call. And the small blind check call. So this pot is getting pretty big. Going to the river, which is the 4 of hearts. Big brick. When it checks to the under the gun plus 2 player, he continues to bet. He snap bets $500. So now I'm thinking to myself, what kind of hand can he have? He can have Queen Jack. He can have a flush. He can have some 2 pairs with ace X hands. But honestly, I am stuck money from Resorts World. It's late night. The way this guy bet, I just didn't feel like he had it. So I thought for a while, and I flicked in the call for $500. Small blind folds, and the under the gun plus 2 player shows Queen 10 offsuit for a 10. We show our 2 pair, and we are good. Next hand, I'm in the big blind with king queen offsuit. There's a limp for 10. The button makes it 30. I call, and the limper calls, going 3 ways to the flop of ace, king, king, flopping trips. I check. The limper leads out now small. He makes it $30. The button calls, and I could be raising here sometimes, but my hand is very strong, and the board isn't that scary. I don't want my opponents to fold an ace, and they're probably drawing dead with most of their holdings, so I just make the call, putting in the trap. The turn card is the 7 of diamonds. I check. Unfortunately, under the gun player checks, and the button checks behind. The last card here is an offsuit 8, and now I'm going to lead out here for value, trying to get called by any ace. I don't expect my opponents to have too strong of a hand, but I'm not going to be checking here. I put out a bet of $90. Under the gun player pretty quickly folds back to the button, who contemplates his option, goes back and forth, and decides to flick in the call. I show king queen for trips, and they are good. We take down another pot here late night at the Bellagio. After a couple of those hands, they were up over $1,000 in just under an hour, running pretty good here at 510, and it gets even better when we look down in the big blind at ace king of hearts. There is a limp from under the gun. The small blind makes it 30. I re-raise to $100, folds all the way back around to the small blind, who decides all of her money is going in there. She shoves all in for $500. Yes, please, ace king of hearts. I make the snap call. I think I need some help, maybe. Woo! Nice. You got me. All right, guys, that is it for our long marathon session across Vegas tonight. Started out at Resorts World, lost about $1,500 there, then went to the Wynn, played for about 30-some minutes and won $355. Then headed over to Bellagio, played 510, ran up a stack super quick, was up like $1,300 or $1,400 and then aces versus ace king on an ace high board, lost $500 there. Tonight was just not our night. Not our night to win. Ended up losing about $455 on the night. If you guys like this new format of me kind of doing an Andrew Nemi style, talking to the camera, doing the hands that way, let me know. Switching up the format a little bit, and Hope to hear you guys and see if you guys like that. So if you like this video, hit that like and subscribe button. This is day number 10 in Vegas. We have about 5 days left. One more vlog for you guys. Hope you enjoyed this one, and until next time, I'll see you.